I want you to picture the loneliest place you've ever been. Now make it pitch black.
Uh-huh.
It's August 9, 2013, just after 1 in the morning. We are on Highway 277 in West Texas.
And this is a stretch of road that feels like it's on the edge of the world.
It is the kind of darkness that just swallows headlights. You're miles from, well, from anything, really.
Just mesquite trees and silence.
Exactly. And in that silence, a truck sits abandoned. Its back end is jutting out into the road, a total hazard.
So a sheriff's deputy pulls up. His lights are cutting through the dark.
And at that exact moment, another car pulls up. A frantic young man named Kyle jumps out holding a gas can.
Yeah.
He's looking for his brother, Brandon.
And this is the moment where reality seems to glitch. Because as they're standing there, the cop and the brother Kyle's phone rings. It's Brandon.
Imagine this. You're standing at your missing brother's truck. You answer the phone, and he says, "I can see you. I'm right here."
Kyle looks around. The deputy is shining his flashlight into the brush. There's the truck, there's the road, but there's no Brandon.
Just wind. He is never seen alive again.
And for over a decade, that single moment has fueled one of the most obsessive true crime mysteries on the internet.
This is the story of the vanishing of Brandon Lawson. But we aren't just here to rehash old beeries today. We're doing this deep dive because the story, it has finally changed.
It has. As of Christmas Day, 2024, we have a resolution. The mystery is technically solved, but I'd argue the answer is just as haunting as the disappearance itself.
So buckle up. We're going to unpack the timeline of that chaotic night. We're going to dissect one of the most analyzed 911 calls in history.
And we're going to explain why it took 11 years to find a man who was, seemingly standing just yards away from help.
To understand the end, though, we have to go back to the beginning. We need to look at who Brandon Lawson was on August 8, 2013.
Right. Because on the internet, he sort of becomes this ghost story. But he was a real person.
A 26-year-old father of 4 living in San Angelo, Texas. An oil field guy. By all accounts, a grinder. A hardworking man who loved his kids.
But he was also struggling. That industry is brutal, and Brandon had a history with methamphetamines.
Sources say he'd been clean for about 6 months before this night. He was trying.
But recovery is. It's fragile. And the catalyst for this whole thing was a domestic argument.
Yeah, the evening of August 8th. He hadn't come home the night before. His common-law wife, Ladessa, she suspected he'd relapse.
You can just imagine the tension. It's late. Trust is broken.
So at 11:54 p.m., Brandon makes a snap decision. He grabs his keys, tells his dad on the phone, "I'm driving to your place."
Which is in Crowley, Texas. That's a 3-hour drive. He's angry, probably exhausted, and possibly under the influence.
He gets in his silver Ford F-150 and heads north. And this is where the geography just becomes a villain in the story.
Highway 277 is desolate. Miles of nothing but ranch land, cactus, and this is crucial, incredibly spotty cell service.
The worst place to be stranded, and that's exactly what happens. Somewhere near the town of Bronte, his truck dies. He's out of gas.
It's 12:30 a.m. He calls his brother Kyle for help.
And Kyle's a good brother. He doesn't hesitate. He gets a gas can, gets his girlfriend, their 4-year-old, in the car, and they head out.
But while Kyle is driving, the situation shifts. It goes from, annoying car trouble to something else entirely.
Brandon calls Kyle again, but he's not talking about gas anymore. He says, 3 expletives are chasing me out of town. He mentions Mexicans in the neighborhood.
Neighborhood? He's on a highway in the middle of nowhere.
That's the first huge red flag.
It was. Kyle actually asked him on the phone, "Man, are you hallucinating?" Brandon denies it. But Kyle later said he was pretty sure Brandon was high that night.
And that's the lens we have to view this next part through. We're not just talking about being confused. Methamphetamine psychosis is a complete rewrite of reality, isn't it?
Exactly. It creates extreme paranoia. Your brain starts creating threats that aren't there. It triggers a flight response from an enemy that doesn't exist.
Which brings us to the centerpiece of this entire case, the 911 call. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon calls for help.
I've listened to this tape so many times. And it's chilling, but it's also a mess. So much static.
And there's reason for that, right? It wasn't a normal 911 dispatch.
No. Because of where he was, the call got routed to a nursing home in Robert Lee, Texas.
Wait, a nursing home?
Yeah. In rural areas, sometimes the sheriff's lines roll over to a 24-hour facility if dispatch is unmanned. So the audio was recorded on a system that was never meant for this.
Okay, that explains a lot. So let's try to unpack what he actually says, because this has been debated for a decade.
He starts, clearly enough, he says, yes, I'm in the middle of the field. So he's left the road.
But then he says something that, well, it's spawned 1,000 theories. To me, it sounds like just push guys over.
Which doesn't really make any sense.
No. So some people hear troopers, like, just pushed a trooper over, but we know there were no police there yet.
The more interesting one, though, is the staper theory.
Right, from the oil field context. It's not a real word, it's slang for a scraper.
Oh.
A piece of heavy machinery.
Exactly. So the theory was Brandon stumbled on some guys doing something illegal with a staper, and he got caught.
And that would explain why he thought he was being chased by real people.
It was the prevailing foul play theory for a long time. But I think there's a better explanation.
Right, Chiz?
Auditory pareidolia. It's a fancy way of saying our brains make stuff up to fill in the gaps.
Like seeing faces in clouds?
Precisely. You listen to static and you expect to hear a threat, so your brain turns a mumble into staper or the sound of wind into gunshots.
So he's narrating a chase that's only happening in his head.
It seems likely. He says, there's one car here, then a guy chasing me to the woods. Please hurry.
But then he says something that changes the whole dynamic. He says, shot the first guy. Or maybe got the first guy?
Notice the contradiction. He's pleading for help, but he's also confessing to a crime that probably didn't happen. In his mind, he's both the victim and the fugitive.
It's just complete disorganized thinking. He hangs up, the call drops, and now we get to the arrival.
1:10 a.m. 20 minutes after that 911 call, Kyle pulls up to the truck.
And at the exact same time, Deputy Neal pulls up because a trucker reported the truck as a hazard.
So help is right there. The brother and the law.
Kyle calls Brandon. Brandon picks up, and he says it. I can see you. I'm right here.
Okay, but you have to put yourself in Kyle's head. He doesn't know about the 911 call. He just sees a cop car.
And Kyle knows Brandon has that active arrest warrant.
Correct. A felony warrant. So Kyle's logic is actually perfectly rational.
Brandon is hiding in the bushes because the cop is here. He's just waiting for him to leave.
Exactly. So he doesn't scream his name. He thinks he's playing it cool.
But inside Brandon's head, it must have been a horror movie. He sees the flashing lights.
And in a paranoid state, the police aren't saviors. They're part of the conspiracy. They're part of the they who are chasing him.
That is just heartbreaking. He's watching his only help, and he's paralyzed by fear.
The deputy checked the truck. It's locked. No sign of struggle. He assumes the driver got a ride, and he leaves.
Kyle waits a bit. He even leaves money for gas on the seat, assuming Brandon will come out when the coast is clear. Then Kyle drives off.
And Brandon watched his lifeline drive away after that. Complete silence. He never calls again.
For years, the family searched, but they ran into this massive wall. Why couldn't they just comb the area the next day?
Welcome to Texas property rights. The land out there isn't a public park. It's all private hunting leases.
And you don't just hop a fence in Texas.
You absolutely do not. We're talking about thousands of acres of dense brush owned by people who don't even live there.
So the police couldn't just get a warrant.
Not without probable cause that a crime happened on that specific piece of land. An abandoned truck isn't enough to let them tear up private property.
It's a legal deadlock. A man is missing, likely on the property, but the search is held up for years because of property lines.
It took an advocate, a former classmate of Brandon's named Jason Watts, to finally break through that.
So fast forward to February 2022, almost 9 years later. Jason and a team finally get permission to do a proper search on that land.
And it's not easy. The brush is so thick you can walk 5 feet from something and not see it. But then, someone spots a shoe.
A white 2013 Nike Air Max.
The lift shoe. Then they find the right shoe. And then camouflage shorts.
It was Brandon's clothing.
And nearby, scattered by the elements and animals, they found human remains.
Now here's the part that just guts me. How far was he from the truck?
Less than a mile.
1 mile. He could have walked back to the road in 15 minutes if he was in his right mind.
But 1 mile is misleading in that terrain. It's thick mesquite, cactus, uneven ground, and it was pitch black. If you ran blindly into that brush, got turned around.
Dehydration would set in fast, even at night.
And once that happens, the confusion gets worse. It's a loop. You're lost, so you panic, which gets you more lost.
So they find the remains in early 2022. Why did it take until the end of 2024 to get a confirmation?
The condition of the remains. After 9 years in the Texas sun and rain, there just wasn't much viable DNA left. It wasn't a simple swab. They had to extract it from degraded bone.
But on Christmas Day, 2024, the family finally got the call. It was him.
It closes the door on the missing person file,
Mm.
but it opens up the debate on the cause of death.
Right. Officially, the case is listed by state investigators as a suspected homicide.
Which is likely a procedural thing. Because of that 911 call, they can't definitively rule out foul play without a body that proves there was no trauma.
So the state is basically saying we have to keep the homicide possibility open because of the tape.
Precisely. But the general consensus now, from the family and the search team, is death by misadventure.
Meaning the drugs and the elements killed him.
The invisible man theory. There were no chasers, there were no Mexicans in the neighborhood, there was just a chemical storm in his brain that told him to run.
He ran into the dark, his phone died, and he couldn't find his way back.
It's almost more tragic than a murder. A murder gives you a villain to hate. This is just a series of terrible events converging on one night.
And you have to feel for Ledesma and Kyle. For 11 years, the internet pointed fingers at them, the forums were vicious.
That's the dark side of this community. Real people get turned into suspects. This discovery completely exonerates them. Kyle did everything right based on the information he had.
So Brandon is found, the case is closed. What's the takeaway here for us?
I think it's about the fragility of perception. Brandon Lawson died in absolute terror. To him, the threat was 100% real. The monsters were real.
The fact that they didn't exist physically doesn't change the reality of his fear in those final moments.
And it shows that perseverance matters. If Jason Watts hadn't pushed for access to that land, Brandon would still just be missing today.
I want to leave you with one final thought. The thing that keeps me up about this case, we're pretty sure he died of exposure. We're pretty sure the chasers were hallucinations, but we still have that audio.
That whisper people hear, "You there."
Even if he was alone, who or what did Brandon think he was talking to? When the mind breaks, what fills the silence? We have the body, we have the DNA, but we will never, ever know what Brandon Lawson actually saw in the dark that night.
And that's the part of the mystery that never gets solved.
Take care of yourselves, check on your friends, and drive safe out there.